Today we are making For the Love of Buckles. So this is like a really fun tote. It's got fringing that we made. The straps are actually connected by buckles. You can take the straps off. They've got these cute little strap holders, which I like. So we've got an external pocket. We've got a zipper closure at the top. And then on the inside, we've got another zipper pocket. And on this side, we've got a slip pocket. So if you would like to see how to make this tote, stay tuned. So let's get started. I'm going to start by making the straps first. So I'm just going to take some double-sided tape and pop it right down the center. Now, if you're new to bag making and you can't eyeball the center, use a ruler to mark a line and then put the tape on that line. We're going to use a lot of double-sided tape, I think, because there is a lot of vinyl in this pattern, but it's going to look pretty cool. So I'm just putting my double-sided tape down, but I'm just going to rub the end to kind of really make it stick, and then the backing for the double-sided tape should come off quite easily. And then I just fold. So I start by manually folding one each side, and then as I move along, I'm going to pinch this together and then push it down, and you'll find that it centers itself, which I thought was pretty fun. And it's a little bit quicker too. And then you just flatten it down and push backwards. Now sometimes it'll get bubbles if it stretches, but that's okay. We're just going to keep... You can kind of just maneuver the bubbles out, or you can just pick it off the double-sided tape if you need to. Alright. So that's one stuck. I'm going to do the other one at the same time, because this vinyl should hold. So I've been trying to use up all my vinyl stash, and this is one of the pieces that was in it. Because I just seem to be hoarding quite a lot of smaller pieces. But the small pieces will still do a whole bag, so it's my way of tidying a little bit, I guess. Sticking it down as we go along. Like that. Okay, so I'm going to crank my stitch length up to 4, and then I'm going to fold these in half again. So where the joint is, we want that on the inside, and I'm going to stitch down the edge. Now I'm using a Teflon foot because it glides along the vinyl better. If you have a walking foot, I highly recommend you use that. Oh, I was actually going to make this bag on the other machine. Too late now. I have begun. I've been buying some extra parts for my cylinder arm machine. So like some different types of feet, which I think are going to be better for bag making. Then I'm just going to stitch down the other side as well. This side is usually quicker and easier, but you still don't want to go full stick because this is where the double-sided tape is. So if you sew too fast, you may snap your needle. And then I'm also going to stitch along the base of this one so that it's the same on both ends, and then back stitch, pull it out, and trim your tails. So as you can see, mine is twisting a little bit. So to combat that, you twist it back in the opposite direction and it tends to flatten itself out. This is because the vinyl on the inside has kind of twisted a little bit. You could also just stick it flat in a cold heat press and let it squish down that way. You just want to make sure this is nice and flat. And then we're going to stitch the second one. So again, that twist, part of that twist is because of the vinyl that I'm using. So this is the Zephyr vinyl from Spotlight. It's a leftover piece that I've got. There's nothing wrong with it. Like, it is still okay vinyl. I just like my Standard Pacifica better. But there's no reason not to use it. Like, I'm not going to throw it out. It just, you know, it has these issues where it twists a little bit. So I just have to combat that by twisting it in the opposite direction. Or squishing it down flatter. Just has an extra step, that's all. But there are definitely different qualities in different types of vinyl. Needle down, pivot, and then back stitch at the end. Okay. I'm just going to melt those tails down that little bit more. Like that. And then see again how it's twisting? So we're just going to twist it back in the opposite direction. And see? Flattens itself out. So if you've got twisty handles, I promise it's not the end of the world. You just got to find where the twist's happening, twist it in the opposite way to straighten it out. So I'm going to pop those aside, and we are going to move on to the connectors. Now I've got, the pattern comes with these little printouts that you can do. I'm not showing you because they've got the measurements on them, but they say what they are, the measurements, and how many you need to cut of each. So it's easy to keep it in the tub because there are quite a lot of smaller pieces in this pattern. So I'm just going to pile these up over to the side and then continue on. So these are the buckle strap connectors. So we're going to do the same thing again. We want to put double-sided tape down the center. Now I'm going to just join all of these together at once like this, and then I can come along and trim it off afterwards, because it's just that little bit quicker. 1, 2, 3, and 4 like that. And then you just come and snip the tape in between all of these. So if you've got to do bulk taping, that might be an idea where you just kind of chain tape them and then trim them down. So we are folding this down and then this one up. So we're just doing the center thing again. That end is a little bit not centered. Just pull that down a little bit more like that. And then I'm just going to rub this on the edge of the table to help the creases, and then do the next one. So we're going to do this to all 4. So these are the buckle connectors. So this might just take a minute. I'm just going to, again, rub it on the table so it helps crease the sides. You can also get rollers for leather work. That will also work to help squish the sides. But I don't have one of those. I used to, but it broke, which was very unfortunate. And I find the edge of the table works just as well for me. And it's one less tool I have to find a home for. I guess if I did more actual leather work instead of just vinyl, I might go out and buy some more leather tools. But at this stage, no. Okay. So now, what are we doing next? We are top stitching the edges. So I'm just going to leave it on my nice top stitch. I'm going to back stitch like that. And then we don't do the flat edges. So I'm just going to chain stitch all of these like this. So we're going to back stitch at each end before we start the next one. The back stitch is locking it in so that the stitches won't come undone later. And then I'm just going to chop this one. And then I can break them up. Trim off the tails from the start. Put them in the bin, not on the table. And then flip them around and I can do the other side. I like to stitch from the top. I always think top stitching looks nicer personally. I'm going to trim this one off and then do this one. Chain stitching is just a little bit quicker and you do save a little bit of thread. Because now I don't have, you know, a lot of tails to chop off. Alright, so that's those done. Right sides up, there we go. So we've done that. Next is grab our buckle. Now the buckles I have a second bar where I can put this on. So I just thread this up and in like so. And it's now holding onto the buckle for me like this. But if you don't have that second bar, you need to find the center and punch a hole so that this part can actually go through it. But I don't need to do that bit because these are the buckles that I have. So I'm just going to clip that like this. Do the same to all of them. So up and down that particular part there. And then clip it. This is just to hold it in place till we get to the next part. You want to make sure that the join is the part touching the metal so that we're not going to see it from the other side. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, and these are for all the handles. And then up that side and down that side. And then again, just clip it together. Now I've also, on this particular one, I've got a lot of like little strays from where I trimmed. So I'm just going to come along with the lighter and melt all of those down so they're not sticking out. Now you want to use the blue part of the flame to melt them, not the red part, because if you've used a light coloured thread, it will discolour it. And we obviously don't want that. Okay, so we've done that bit, the equivalent of that bit, got them there. Place one buckle connector on the top of the raw edge of a handle. So we're going to grab the handle and we're going to line up all of those edges like that. Flip the buckle up. So you want it to lay nice and flat and then flick the buckle part up. So depending on what buckle, it will flip differently. Make a mark and punch a hole. So we're going to use just a pen. And so I'm going to flip this up and then I need a ruler and I'm going to mark up there, and that's where we're going to punch the hole. So for me, now that I've done it, I can see that it's right in between this part of the buckle and the buckle holder, I guess. So I'm going to do that to all of them. So you want to make sure you're placing the buckle the right way. It should sit flat out like this. And then we're just going to flip up that bit there and mark a hole in between the two parts. That's what works for my buckles. And then we're going to grab the other handle and we're going to do the same thing. So again, I'm clipping it all together just so it won't move while I'm marking this. It's obviously pretty important we get this correct. You want to make sure all the edges are nicely lined up. And so then there. Now I just need to grab my hole punch, which I have not put back in the machine. There's half of it. I was doing some grommets, so I haven't changed it over. So pop the bottom half in, and I just need the top bit. I'm going to have to hit pause and go find it. Finding that was definitely more of a mission than I anticipated. My child had hid it in a drawer. So, now that we've got our holes marked, we're going to punch them. And then I'm just going to take off the buckle. We're about to do other stuff with that. So I'm going to mark the holes like this, and then I can put the straps aside again. But I am still putting the clip back on the end of the straps. There. And then here. Okie dokie. So now we're going to do our connector rings. So you should have another 4 pieces. Oops, my laptop's not on silent. Give me a second. I've got the pattern next to me because I've never made this before. So we're just doing it. I like to have the instructions, just to make sure I'm doing it all the way that they suggest, I guess. So I'm going to do the same thing again. Now I probably didn't need double-sided tape as thick as this. I possibly could have used a thinner one, but it won't matter that I've used the thick one. So again, I've just chain stuck them, and then I can just come along and snip in between. Now, the reason I go through so many snips is because I am cutting double-sided tape, which is like cutting paper. So maybe have a separate pair of snips that you mark for double-sided tape, because it will blunt them quicker. I've just made peace with that. So I'm folding both sides into the center. Now, obviously, this is a very, very small fold it to the center, because they're a lot smaller. So they're only super skinny. So I'm going to do the same thing again, and I'm going to top stitch to make them look pretty. And I'm actually just going to, because they're so little, I can just lift up, come straight to the other side, and do the same thing there. Because we are actually going to trim off some of that back piece. I probably don't even need to back stitch, but it's just a good habit to be in. So again, folding it to the center. Now it is very, very small. So just be aware that it may take you a bit longer to do because of its size. And then I'm going to trim this one off so it gets out of my way. Do the next one. Now the reason I'm not sticking all 4 of these is because it's so small, it's got a higher chance that it's going to unfold if I had have done all 4. Whereas if I'm doing one at a time, I'm not really giving it any chance to pull apart, because it is such a tight space to fold over. There is more of a chance that it will pop open, and I don't want that. Up one side, swivel, chop this one off, down the other side. One more. So different things really do call for different types of sewing. So the other one I chain stitched all 4 and then went back and did the other side. These ones, however, it's fine to go up and back because we're going to trim off some excess in a minute. Now, the idea of these is they are our little loops, like that. So see how it's got a very cute little loop? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put it right sides together so that my fold is facing out. And that way I can measure exactly where I'm going to sew like this. And then take this off and stitch that together. So we're going to go back and forth a few times. I'm also going to lower my stitch length so that I get more stitches per whatever size that is, like that. So I've just gone back and forth several times. And then I'm going to grab my Class A scissors because they cut bulk nicely, and we're going to cut right next to those stitches. And then we're just going to flip it around so that that join is on the inside, and then it just slots up and on like so. How cute is that? So we're going to do that to all of these. So again, right sides together. You can even probably just hold it at the side like this. So to there. You can even mark it with a pen. I'm just eyeballing it, as you can tell. But if you were worried, you could mark it with a pen. Now, there's a fine line between not enough and too many stitches. If you stitch too many stitches and they're not kind of in the same holes, you could actually tear your vinyl. So make sure you're using a vinyl with like a fabric backing, or they possibly won't survive. So then again, I'm just going to turn that through. Now it is a little bit tight and tricky, like that. And then we slide that up and on. Now I'm putting the join in the center at the back so that we're not going to see it, like that. 2 more to go. I'm also taking off the clips, apparently. You can put them back on if you wanted to. All right. So join. You don't even have to line it up perfectly even at this end because we're cutting off the excess anyway. So it's not really going to affect much if you don't do it. Stitch, back, forward, back, forward. That's enough. So you just kind of, I don't know, 3 or 4 layers. Whatever you feel comfortable is enough that you think that that's going to hold. Because it won't get much pressure on here, but the turning through would put a lot of pressure on the stitches. So just beware, like this part that I'm doing right now is the part that's potentially going to pop them. So just make sure you've got enough, is all I'm saying. All right, slide that up and on, come on. I know it fits, this one's extra tight. But I think that's because I didn't quite cut enough of the excess off. But it'll still sit flat, and that's all that we really care about. Last one. Oops. So, right sides together. So that the join that we created is poking out the top. So if you bent this, you could see the center. Right there, and there, and stitch, back stitch, forward and back. Try not to zigzag down too much, but like that is a really good amount. It looks sturdy. It's pretty much gone through the same holes. Let's just reinforce that. And then we're going to snip off the excess. And then twist them. It's the twisting bit that's the hardest. My nails are definitely helping in this particular situation. Okay. You can just squish it a few times if you want to. Hold it and then slip it on. Like that. It's so cute. Okay. Put that on. Da, 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 da. So then pass the buckle through the ring to attach the buckle strap connector. To attach the buckle, use the connector placement instructions of the tote pattern. Okay, cool. So they are now done and we can just pop them all aside. If you are worried that the ring's going to slip off where you put them, you can put the clips back on the end if you want to, but I'm feeling confident that they'll be fine on the edge of my table. So now we are up to the next section, which is the base. So I have already embroidered my logo onto the base because it's quicker. And so now I'm just going to install my bag feet. Now on their base, they've actually quilted this. I'm not going to do that because this isn't a quilted bag for me. This is just going to be a fun buckle bag in suede. So now we just need to mark where our feet are going to go. So I'm going to take a ruler and put some lines like this. And then same here, do lines this way, and you should get like a cross. And where the cross is where we're going to put our feet. Like so. Now my crosses aren't perfect, but you do get the idea. And that's all that matters. And I did just use a normal pen for that. So now I'm going to put the hole punch centered over the crosses and punch the holes. Now these holes are like hand press friendly. You'll be able to get your hand press to these particular coordinates. And then we need the rivet press to put the bag feet in. So I'm going to push the post through the bottom and then click the top on. And even if you don't hear a click, you feel it click in. And once they've clicked in, I'm not worried that they're going to fall off. I could pull them off, but they won't fall off, which is nice. So like that. So now they're all clicked in. I'm just going to take my rivet press. I always put the dome face up and just give it a little squish. You'll feel it go down. You don't want to squish as hard as possible as you may damage the dome. But you just want to push down until you feel it kind of give in, and that means that the feet have attached themselves. So that's now the base done. You can pop that aside. You can definitely quilt it if you want to. That is entirely your choice. Next page is... Okay, so we're up to some lining pieces now. So I've got all my stuff in my tub organised for the most part. Slip pocket trim. So that's the one we're doing now. So I can take my little piece of paper, and these are a good way. You could just store this because there's only really one shaped pattern piece. Everything else is measurements. So this is quite an easy pattern to store. You just need like a little Ziploc bag, and there's all your measurements on these pieces of paper. Just if you wanted to do that. Okay, so I'm going to take my lining and put two of them right sides together. Now, if yours is directional, you want your top at the end when not going to stitch. So now I'm just going to stitch around. Stitch and back stitch. I'm on a joining stitch length now. Shouldn't go that fast. There's too much stuff on my table that vibrates. And then we're going to back stitch, and I just snapped my bobbin thread. I heard that, or maybe it was my top. Yep, no, it was my bobbin. So if I back stitch too fast on my machine, it has this annoying little habit of snapping the thread. But I also hear it, so it's fine. All right, scissors, we're going to trim down some of this excess. So when you're trimming excess, you don't just want to cut at a 45-degree angle like that. It won't turn as nice as if you cut a little bit deeper. And then we're going to pop all that in the bin because it's nice to be tidy as we go. I'm also going to trim off some at the top here, just so that the top's not going to be too thick. And then I'm going to take the corner and push my finger into it, and then do this with my fingers and push out the corner. I'm going to do that to both. So now it looks like we've got a little bit of a sack here. If you were using non-directional fabric, you could have actually made this piece one long piece if that had suited you, and just fold it in half and stitch the sides. So now we're going to take our vinyl accent, and so we're going to seal the pocket with the vinyl. So if you're a beginner sewer and you're worried that that's not going to work, come along here and just baste this shut like this. So it's going to sit and be one piece, because we all know how I feel about one pieces. So if you're new, that little extra stitch there might be super helpful. So now I'm going to just manually fold this and give it a bit of a crease at the halfway point, because that's going to be also easier to get it on. And we're using vinyl for this, so we don't have to worry about tucking in the ends because they won't fray. So now that crease that I just made should slot straight onto here. And so I'm going to crank my stitch length back up so it's decorative, and I'm going to top stitch. So I'm going to do 2 stitches and back stitch at the end. And then I'm just going to slowly come and fold it over. Now, if you are still struggling a little bit with this concept, you could put some double-sided tape on the vinyl, and then you could tape the vinyl to the top. That would also work. It's just more double-sided tape. So when we get to the edge of the fabric, we're going to back stitch. And then we're just going to trim off those tails on both ends. And then I've got a little bit of extra here. So we're just going to trim that off so it's even. And now you've got a slip pocket. Pretty sure that's how they wanted us to do it. I didn't actually check. Oh yeah, cool. So let's grab one of our lining main panel pieces. I have already cut out the corners. So you cut a rectangle and then we just cut the corners out. I'm going to pop all of those in here. And so then I'm going to line this up in the center like so, and I'm going to top stitch around each edge. So my top stitching is going to be 1/8 of an inch from the edge. We're going to go down. My husband's home, so I'm going to have to turn this off in a sec. We're going to go across the bottom and then up the other side and back stitch. Right. Alrighty. So we are back. Not that you know that I've been gone for ages, but still. So I'm going to put a stitch down the center of the pocket to make it 2 pockets. Funny about that. Because that one big pocket, I think it would be too big anyway, and it would probably gape. So by turning it into 2 pockets, they're still big enough pockets that I can get my whole hand in, but you can just store more stuff. So the next section is we're going to add this fun little key fob. Now I've only got a large swivel clip, so we're just going to do a large one. So we're just going to fold this in half with the wrong sides together and stitch down the edge. I did have a small one, but I can't seem to find it. I've got my stitch length on nice and long, and I'm just stitching really, really close to that folded edge. Now, if you wanted to, you could put some edge paint on this, either a same color or a fun contrasting color. If I was going to put edge paint on this particular one, I think I would do like a gold or a silver. And so then we're just going to pop that on. Now, obviously that looks really, really big. So it just means it's going to move around a bit, but that's probably not the worst thing in the world either. And so then I'm just going to put these together. So I'm going to have the folded side up so I can see. And I'm just going to stitch vertically down the center of it, up to the metal, and then back stitch again. So that's just going to lock that on there. You could also use a rivet if you would like. But then we just have to deal with the fact that I've got some knots on the back. So I'm just going to use my snips to trim that knot out so it's not so noticeable, like so. And then they say to rivet it onto here like so, but you can also just pull it down and stitch it in place. So stitching is going to do the same as a rivet. So I'm just back and forthing like we did with the strap circle parts, whose official name I can't currently think. So strap rings. And so now that is attached. So this is now where you can like attach your keys and easily find them in your bag. So that piece is done. We're going to pop that aside and we're moving on to the other pocket. So we've got two pockets here. We've got an inside and an outside. So I'm just going to pick one. I've clipped all three pieces together. So we need our two bits here and then the vinyl accent. And I did that just because I found it easier. Now from the back, I am going to measure out. Actually, we might just do a Tory pocket because I like Tory pockets. So, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch my two together so that it becomes one piece. I'm just going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance with this. And I'm going to stitch and back stitch to join it. And then back stitch at the other end. That was probably a few too many back stitches, but that's okay. Right. Then, this is big enough that I'm going to grab my zipper template, which I love. And I'm just going to pick one that fits. So 8 works well for this particular pocket. My zipper pockets are actually different sizes because I ran out of this glorious fabric and I wasn't paying attention when I started. So I'm going to go just about a 1/2 inch down from that line that I just stitched, and I'm going to draw this zipper rectangle. So this is just a quicker way. Instead of me having to measure everything, I can just lay the template down. It's got all these different sizes, and then just draw around it. So as you saw, if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that usually that takes me much, much longer. So, lining piece right sides up. Then the piece that I didn't draw on is going to go to the top like this. And we're going to center the pocket like so. And then I'm just going to stitch around the line that I drew. We're going to needle down and pivot. I'm also going to roll this up so that it doesn't hit anything because that would most likely distort my stitches, which is something else I do not want. Then we're going to flick down, stop with the needle down, up the other side like that, and then trim off all of that. Perfect. So now, with all of that open, I'm going to just bend this over the edge here and snip that center. And then put my scissors in that hole and cut outwards. Like so. Now I'm going to have to stop again and go and iron this because I currently have no room here for an iron in my little space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this up and I'm going to iron across like this, and then I'm going to pull this down and iron down, and then I will push it all through the hole and then iron it all flat. So I'll be right back right after I do that. Lovely and ironed. So now I'm going to take my accent piece and some double-sided tape and just put some on the 2 long edges. You don't need the short edges. They will stay right where they need to. I'm about to sneeze. Oh. I'm sure a lot of you just said bless you when I did that. I've got dust up my nose. There's a lot of dust in my, well, not dust, there's fabric particles. I wouldn't really call it dust. But I need to vacuum in here again. I vacuum every day to every second day, but I didn't do it last night. So it's time, because I'm sneezing. Okay, lay that down, and then we're just going to take the accent panel and lay it over the top. Like so. You're going to make sure that it's on the edge of the fabric. Like that. And like that. Right, so now that it's stuck down, I'm going to make sure that this pocket is going to constantly be out of my way. And I'm just going to top stitch with a more decorative length around this accent panel. Now I know this might be a little fiddly for some, so you don't have to do your pocket this way. But I like it. Needle down. And so then I'm just grabbing that fabric underneath and just shoving it out of the way. And then we'll just put the whole pocket up like that, and we can stitch the whole rest of it without incident. Every time I get to a corner, I am making sure my needle is down and pivoting so I get nice crispy points, since that's how it looks. Like that, and then we're going to backstitch when we get back to the start. And so that is your accent panel on. It's nice and crisp edges. So now we just need a piece of zipper tape, which we might do a grey, because it kind of goes with the greyish black tones of my fabric. And so, as you can see, I did not singe the end. So always singe with the blue part of the flame. I know I've already said that today, but I'm going to say it again. And probably a million more times. So we're going to singe that one. And then we're going to also singe this end so that we don't have that same issue I just had. And while I'm here, I'll make sure what the other end is done as well. So now that won't fray and you won't lose any of your zipper. I'm going to keep that out though, because we still have 2 more zippers to do. And in my Lord of the Rings bowl of hardware, I've got 3 zips. So we're going to have an inside zipper pocket, an exterior zipper pocket, and a top zipper closure. Which I'm sure you saw at the start. I don't know why I just told you that. So, to get this on, I hold it against my finger, pull down both sides so it can't slip upwards, and then you just kind of twist it back and forth until it goes on. That is the best way that I have found to do zippers. Now, if you are a beginner, get some really thin double-sided tape, like this 1/4 inch or 6mm tape, and stick it along the very, very edge, and then you can actually stick it in place while you sew. I'm not going to do that today, because I don't feel like making a trip to Spotlight for more double-sided tape. So, I always like my zippers to close to the left. I know I say that in every video as well, but that's just what I personally like. I'm right-handed. I like it to close to the left. So, now I'm just going to take this. I'm going to open up my pocket so it's flat and just lay it over the top of the zip. Everything should line up because it's the same size as the fabric. It should just sit end to end, no drama. So now I just want to make sure that my zipper pull is up out of the way. Needle down when you get to the zipper pull. Lift up your foot and zip it over there so it's out of the way. Now you don't have to do these zipper accents. You can just do the zipper pocket without it. Although on my particular fabric, it's probably going to be handy so that you can see where it is and it doesn't just blend in. Alternatively, I could have done like a gold zipper so it did stand out. Except I'm using silver hardware. Because my zippers, my buckles were silver. So there you go. That's now in. So now all we need to do is if you just kind of shake it from this piece, these should be perfectly even because we already measured everything. So you can just stitch straight down the side. Actually, and across the bottom if you want to. So we can do all 3 sides of this pocket. Because we can leave the exterior pocket open. It doesn't actually matter which ones are left open, as long as there's one. And then we're going to back stitch, trim off those tails and back at the start so that it'll annoy you later. And now that's your other interior piece done. What's next on our list? I've done all of that. Okay, so now we're going to do our actual top zipper. So we need, where are the pieces? Here they are. I'm doing it very differently to the pattern. Not even going to lie. Well, not very differently, but definitely a little bit differently. Now, I literally ran out of fabric to do this, so I've technically actually put a join, but it's a lining piece you're very rarely going to look at, and from a distance here, you can't even see it, so that's fine. But if you can see it, I just thought I'd let you know that that's what that is. I needed a join. So, double-sided tape, again, always double-sided tape. We're going to put it on the end of all 4 pieces. So both ends of all 4 pieces. Because we need to hide these edges. And we want to be able to tuck them in. And you can either iron them, or if you've done vinyl for your top zipper closures, you obviously can't iron these ones over. Now, I haven't put interfacing on this because it is already quite thick. I could have maybe put some median woven, but you don't want anything too thick on this because then it'll be too hard to maneuver around. So this is what I've got, and this is the way I'm doing it. Again, you can follow the pattern. It has a couple of different ways, so you can have it all one type of fabric, so I could have done it all in this, or it's got the option where you do it leather, so you don't have to have any tucked over edges. They can all just be raw, but this is a third way, I guess. Right, so I've got a ruler here, which you may or may not be able to see. So what I want is all the pieces to end up being the exact same length. That's the end goal here. So I'm going to peel off the double-sided tape. I'm going to line it up here, like this. And basically I'm folding over about a ½ inch on each end. So I want it to end up being 1 inch shorter. But on the off chance that I did cut something wrong, I'm using the ruler to make it go from here to here on all pieces. So that's one. Now we're just going to do the rest. Oh no, now the sneezing's kicked in hay fever. Now I'm going to need to go and get hay fever tablets. I don't really want to have to stop the video again. Okay, so then that's that end, and then this end. So that's 2. There, see that? I need to go and give that another iron anyway, because it's now not folding where it's meant to. Of course. Sometimes which I didn't do in this case, but sometimes once I've quickly ironed the interfacing on and then cut around it, I will then go and pop it in the heat press just to give it a really good extra press. I did that yesterday with the tester bag that I am designing. You can't have a sneak preview because I haven't actually sewed any of it yet. But we are doing a beach bag next because I've had a lot of requests for a beach bag and I got inspired. And it's got binding, but don't hate me, it's going to be fabulous. You're going to want to do the binding, I promise. Alright, so they are all done, but I do need to go and iron this down. So I am just going to hit pause, iron it, get a Claritine, and then we'll be back to sew all of this. So I have ironed all of them, so they're now like super flat. And we're also going to need a zipper end. Now, you could just put both of your ends into the zipper so it only goes from there to there, but I always like mine a little bit longer. And by a little bit, I just kind of eyeball it. So I'm going with that much longer, which is 1, 2, exactly 3 inches. There you go, I can eyeball 3 inches without even knowing it. So again, we're going to singe. And we're going to singe. Was it that end or this end? I don't know. Won't hurt to do them over and over. As long as you don't melt it, it'll be fine. So, now, what we're going to do is we're going to take one of our lining pieces, right side is up, lay that here, then take one of our top pieces and put it right sides down. Ooh, it looks like I've cut different size pieces. That's all right. I think that's when the pattern changed. That's not a problem. Trim it off. Look at that. Now they're the same size. So, you want to split your zip, and we're going to put that at a right angle into the zipper end. So you can probably even separate your whole zip if you want to. Now, I'm going to put it right on the edge. Actually, I'm probably going to put it like 2 stitches further down. And then we're going to start at that edge and just stitch. So we want to be on a joining stitch length. We're going to go forward and back to lock the stitches in. And then you just want the zipper up against the edge over here. And then we're just going to stitch along. Now these should all line up perfectly, but make sure that you don't pull on one more than the other and stretch them out of shape, because that can happen. And that's exactly what we don't want to do. So I'm holding this at this end. If you want to, you can use some wonder clips to clip it all in place. And then when we get to the end, we don't want to go over. We want to stop right at the stitches like so. And then we're just going to trim that off. And so this end is now encased. And then when we flip this over, there's no raw ends anywhere. So now I'm going to line them up with wrong sides together, and I'm going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch along all the non-raw edges. So this open edge we're not going to worry about, but we're going to do all the rest. Down, pivot, and then down along the edge, like so. And that is now 1/2 of our zip done. So then we're going to do the same thing here. So we're going to grab this, except we want to make sure that we're doing opposites, right? So we're going to line the zip up along here so that it matches like this. And then we're going to fold this end down and put this on top of here like so. No, we're not. We're going to put the edge of the tape along the edge like this and so. So to do that at the top, we just put this at the other end. Now, if you want to, you can grab a wonder clip, and we're just going to start a couple of stitches down with this, so you can clip it in place like that. And then we're going to put this on top. And again, if you want, you can add it into the clip. You can clip all the way if you want to. I would probably do them every about that much. So have a 2-inch-ish gap between them. You don't need them too close to each other if you were going to clip. Now again, I don't have to be clipping, but this is a tutorial. You always want to put one at the start and the end though. Okay? So now, because I want to start from this end, because then I've got the bulk of this out of my machine. So I'm going to lift up my needle and start right on that fabric. So we're going to do a couple forward, couple back. And then just pull the clips off as we go. Get all the way to the edge and then back stitch again. Trim off those tails so that they're not going to poke out. And then, if my brain has done this correctly, this will now be the opposite. Ta-da! So I'm now going to fold this over in half. Now, I haven't trimmed off the excess on this, so that's okay. I can do that in a second. I'm going to go needle down to pivot, and I'm going to pull the teeth away from the fabric. Like this, needle down, pivot. You don't even have to backstitch because I'm about to trim it all off anyway. So this was just because, yeah, these things happen. I'm actually not that worried about it at all. Problem solved. So, now we're going to bring back one of our pieces. Now, I always like to grab the one with the zip because I want to make sure that this top zip is going to close the same way as that zip. So I'm going to line this up in the middle like this and clip it down. So you want to do it in the middle. Now, So if you need to find the middle, you can just fold this in half and do a little tiny clip here and then do the same to this one. And this is how you can find the middle of everything. So now we just lay that clip down over that one, and that's the middle there. You may have already found the middle when you were putting in your pocket, or you may be able to just kind of do it. The more bags you make, the more easy it is to just find the center by eyesight. So I'm going to put that one there, and then while I'm going, I'm going to fold this one in half, find the center. Which, by the way, even though I eyeballed it, that is perfectly in line with that stitching. It's just a practice thing, like everything. I had a mate that was training to be a diesel mechanic, and their boss made them use a torque wrench for everything so that they could like work out what the torque was. And so now he can just do it by feel. Repetition helps, I promise. Alright, so we've clipped all that on. With a lot of clips, but that's okay. And then we're going to grab the top half. Now, I have used the exterior fabric to do the top half because that's what I wanted. I want it to look like this. But you could also just use another lining piece. The other reason is because I ran out of lining. But this will just mean that at the top, it'll all look like suede until you open the zipper, which I think is going to look quite classy. I'm always doing fun, bright, colourful bags. Sometimes it's nice to do something with a little bit of class. So, I'm going to stitch this one because I'm running out of room. So I'm going to put my needle down. I'm on a joining stitch length, which for me is 2.5. And then we're just going to stitch all the way across. Like this, and then back stitch at the end. Trim off those tails. I just saw another one floating around. And so now your zipper panel is inserted. There are no raw edges. I'm not going to attach the actual zip until the very, very end because I find it easy to turn the bag when I don't have to do that. And because I've singed here, I'm not worried it's going to fray and carry on. So, That's one. Now we're going to grab the second one. Now, if you've got a print here, just make sure that you're putting the bottom of the print, which would, like, it would sit upside down so that the bottom of the print is being attached here. Mine is just suede, so it's fine. But if you've got something that is directional, just consciously think about how you're attaching that, because I'd hate for you to do it upside down and then have to come back and fix it, because nobody likes unpicking. Oh, there's my base. So, stitch. And along we go. And back stitch. Whoops. And so then you've got your other one that goes in the other direction. Alright, I'm going to put those aside, and I'm pretty sure we now move on to exterior, if I'm not mistaken. We've done all of that. Oh no, we're going to stitch the insides. So there you go. Alright. So, lining this up. You want to make sure that you've done your zipper correctly, so the raw edges, or the non-raw edges should be here, or the other side, depending on which way you're holding it. So I'm going to put one at this top edge to line it up. Then I'm going to put a clip right here to make sure that these are lined up well. Like that. You may even want to put two on each side. Then we want to come down and line up the end. Those are the 3 points that have to line up. Then with this middle bit, if you want to, just add some extra clips in. However you like. Then we're going to stitch down the side. I'm going to move that out of the way. And then back stitch. Always back stitch, guys. So that is now one side done, and you can open it up to check to make sure that your seam here is lovely and even. You do want it lovely and even. Now, this end may become a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it over as far as I can, grab a clip, and clip it out of the way. So now I'm not worried it's going to get into this seam, because I can just push it over and clip it down, like so. Then again, we're going to line up the top. Then I'm going to come and I'm going to line up this accent where the color change is. Even if it's the same fabric, do still make a point to line that up because it is still noticeable, it is a seam. Then we line up the bottom, and then if you just pull, everything should line up in between, and you can add some clips like that. I always like to sew top to bottom. That's my thing, so I'll just flip it to the other side. Or I like to sew thickest to thinnest. Now this fabric's thicker and it's got a thicker interfacing on it, so I'm starting at the thick end and I'm working my way down. And then I'm going to backstitch. Trim off those tails, like always. And then it wants us to stitch the bottom. So I'm not going to line this one up, it's 2 pieces of lining. But if you want to put some clips, put some clips in, and then we're going to stitch and backstitch. Now my backstitching thread is caught, which is why that's pulling. So I'll just unhook that and continue on. And then backstitch at this end too. Trim. And then trim this end as well. And so now we're going to box the corners. So what that means is I put my fingers in at that right angle and I'm going to pull them out until the 2 seams meet up in the center. I'm going to push one way and one the other. And then to make sure that that's going to line up when I stitch, we're going to add 2 clips. Because again, that's the noticeable part. So now I'm just going to lay it down. Stitch and back stitch. Again, we're still on a joining stitch length. Make sure that none of the other bag is in the way. stitch along that bottom, like so. And I just ran out of bobbin thread, so that was pretty good timing. Trim that off. So now you should have this beautiful edge, like so. Now, to wind a bobbin, I always put my foot up. I unthread any of the moving parts over here so nothing gets knotted. And then we are also going to oil our bobbin casing holder part under the machine. So I'm going to put my thread through the bobbin and I'm going to hold it until it snaps. Like that. And then I have a thing of oil, which I just saw a second ago. I swear I just had it. Everything is moving on me today. Trippy. There it is. So I've got a little case of oil and it's got this really small nozzle. If you don't have one of these, you can also use like a little plunger. This was for medicine for my kid, but every time you buy a new bottle, you get a new plunger. So this is now for oil. So you can suck up just a little bit of oil and then squirt it onto the area. I do have a video of where to put this if you guys want to go and check it out, because you obviously can't see it from back there. But I only put like a little bit. You don't want to put too much oil, then you'll make your fabric oily. If you slip, can you hear how that's quieter? Because I can. My machine mechanic up in Townsville suggested that every time I do a bobbin, I should do that. Now, if you've accidentally done way too much oil, before you put your bobbin case and thread it all back up, you put like a scrap of fabric underneath, put your needle down and just sew nothing. And what that will do is any excess oil will be soaked up in that piece of fabric, so it won't damage your project. I have worked out exactly how much I need before that happens over time, so I don't need that extra step. But you would do it before you thread it, so that then it's not getting all over your thread as well. So we're just going to rethread the machine. Now I don't rethread the whole thing. I just tie the old piece onto the new piece and pull it through, because I personally find that quicker. And I'm all about speed. And you only waste like, you know, that much thread maybe. So now let's go and box this other corner. So again, I'm going to put my fingers at those right angles and pull. Whoops. Now, when we push these over, you want to make sure that this base one is going to go in the same direction. That is very important. Otherwise, your bag will have like a twist in the base and you'll feel it. So I'm just going to clip the two in the center, and then you should be able to pull this out so that the right angle parts are right on the edge. That's how you know you've lined it up straight. And then we're going to stitch and back stitch, and then slowly stitch over it, lining everything up, and back stitching again. And so now you've got your inside of your bag all done. I'm going to leave these clips on because I don't want them to come off yet. And then what part do they want us to do next? Oh, okay, the fringing. So I didn't do the fringing off camera. I thought I'd do it on camera to show you, because I've got a small cutting board now and a rotary cutter. So this is my fringe piece. It tells you what size to cut, obviously. And then I just need a ruler. Now, I'm going to want an erasable form of writing implement. So this is a friction texter. And I'm going to want to measure 1/4 inch strips like this. Now you can go the whole way because I have a plan for cutting, but you do want to go and measure across all of this. Now, I didn't do this before the video for two reasons. One, because I wanted to show you, and two, because of how long this has sat waiting to be made, the friction lines probably would have like faded, because that's what they do. So you're just going to keep ruling all the way across. Move that out of my way. It's impeding my speed. Okay. So, there's all my lines. Now, to cut them, I'm actually going to now just rule a line across the top. Like this, and this is where we want to stop. Now, obviously the stopping is the hard bit, so I'm going to go from the bottom and I'm going to stand over it so I can see and stop at that line. Now, if I go a little bit over it, it's okay, because all of that is getting tucked up under something anyway. This is also how you would make a tassel. I actually wouldn't mind getting a tassel template. So it's already got the cut, so you just stick your thing in and off you go. Now this is a nice new rotary cutter blade, so this is working out lovely. I'm not putting a lot of pressure. And then we're getting this tassel-y look. Did that one, or this one? Three to go. Okay, so that is how you do a tassel. So my lines at the top aren't like 100% perfectly straight, but it's still a tassel. It's still going to look like a tassel, and because I cut it as a square, it's still going to fit. Another option is, if you don't want to have to do that, I know definitely at Spotlight, but also other places, you can buy pre-done tassel that is already done for you. And the way they've done this one is it's the same on both sides, so there's no like right and wrong side to this particular tassel. So that is another option. It just doesn't go with my coloring today. Right, tassel is done. Also, if you didn't have a rotary cutter blade, you can cut those with scissors. It just will take a while. So now we want our fancy accent pieces. Accent overlay pattern piece. You should have 2 or 4 if you did the 4 option of these. And then we're going to need one of our main panels. Now, I haven't used foam in this bag because I don't think I'm going to need it. This is an upholstery suede, so it's quite thick already. And then I've also put my hefty vinyl, interfacing, not vinyl, on it. Now, because I know that this fabric, this particular vinyl is a little bit stretchy, I'm actually going to use double-sided tape to hold it down while I top stitch it, because I don't really trust it. So if you've got fabric that is stretchy, like you've got stretchy vinyl, but you really want to use it, just use double-sided tape to hold it while you're top stitching it down, and that way it's less likely to stretch. I can't promise that it definitely won't, but I can promise this is definitely going to help. So I'm putting it just out of the stitch line. I don't want to have to sew through the tape, because depending on your machine and your needle type, it might gum up your needle. It won't for me, but it's also good to teach you this. So I've just gone down a little bit to make sure that that's not going to happen. So I'm now going to pick off the backing. I'll just do one at a time. So I'll pop the other one aside and do the other one in a second, but I won't pull the backing off and stick it just yet. And so then I want to line up the bottom corner with the bottom corner like this and pat. You don't want to pull and stretch. You want to pat it down so that there are no stretches. Because if I kept doing that, you would stretch it out of shape. Okay, up to a decorative stitch length, which for me today is 4. I'm all about the 4 at the moment. Now, as you can see, this is in the way. So what I would actually do is stitch it from this end. You can stitch it from either, but this end I think is going to be easier because the bulk is now out of my machine. Now this is a bit tricky because it's a curve and it's a pretty tight curve. So you just want to do a couple of stitches at a time. And then across we go. Now again, you don't want to go too fast if you think it's going to stretch. And then we're going to go around 1 or 2 stitches at a time. Make sure it's not going to hit the camera, because it might have. And that is 1 accent piece along the bottom. Yay! Trim off those tails and let's do the second one. So we're going to do exactly the same thing again. I've already got the double-sided tape on, so that's one bit I don't have to do. Peel off the backing. I'm always putting everything that I don't need in the bin because it makes my space tidier. It's easier to sew in a tidier space. So then pat it, don't pull it. And I want the bulk out of the machine, so I'm going to go this way. Needle down and pivot to get onto the straight part. And again, not too fast if your vinyl is stretchy, or if you've got like a walking foot, definitely use that. Don't hit the camera. Obviously you probably won't have that problem, but I'm just, you know, talking out loud. Apparently I say everything, so there you go. Second one, done. What are we doing next? Okay, so we're going to take our fun little piece and pick whichever one is the front or the back. Now, I did actually contemplate doing some embroidery on this. It was like a 50-50. I couldn't quite decide what I wanted. So I ended up just leaving it plain. But if you're going to do an embroidery, then this would obviously be on the back of the bag, depending on if that matters to you or not. So, to make my life easier, I'm going to put double-sided tape on here. And then I'm going to stick this to my fringing, because the idea is it comes out the bottom of the accent piece. So I'm going to just lay the fringing down so it's flat. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to line it up centered like that. And then just push. Again, not stretching the vinyl. So we're just patting like that. And so now it's one piece. If you have mad sewing skills, you could have actually made this piece and have it all as one and then just cut the fringing up to this line. That would also work for you. But if you've got a tassel pattern maker, that would be obviously easier. So we're going to make this particular one the same way that the pattern says. Because of the fringing, it's going to get in my way. Actually, we want this in the center. I think I was in the center, but just in case, we're going to mark it like that. And then obviously we're not going to trim this one, but you can just put like a semi-permanent crease. Measure down. That's where we want that. So again, you could have put some more double-sided tape on, but I feel like I've used probably enough. So I'm just going to start along this top edge. I'm going to do 2 stitches and back stitch to lock it in. And then slowly across here, needle down, pivot, needle down, pivot. And then this bottom piece is going to feel thicker. So if you've got a machine that doesn't love thicker, you may want to go extra slowly. So this is sewing this down and stitching the outside of the pocket down. Needle down, pivot. Last side and back stitch. So I went slowly because again, this was trying to stretch on me. Because it's fun like that. So now, how fun does that look? I like it. We want to cut out this. Now, their bags are done in vinyl. Mine's done in suede, but as long as I cut it slightly bigger, then I'm still going to be fine. So I'm just going to draw around the edge of the zipper pocket panel. And then grab my little scissors, because these are better at doing like maneuvery things. And then when I fold that up, I just want to come like 1/8 of an inch past that line, because we don't want to see this poking out. But if we cut it too far back, then when we top stitch, it won't catch it. So it's like a fine line. You just want to be just outside of the line we drew so that we're not going to see it. And I'm using little scissors so I can maneuver the corners better. So I'm just going to trim this out. Now, if you've got leather, you could just trim it exactly to the same size as the zipper pocket. But again, mine's suede. So if you've used fabric, you want to do it this way where you cut just that little bit more. I mean, there's heaps of ways you can do zipper pockets. The idea is that you won't see any of this. I'm going to pull this down behind. You can even come up underneath like this and then just trim off that last little bit like that. So from the back, this is what it looks like. You can just see a little tiny bit of the zipper pocket. And I need to take a little bit more out of this corner because I can still see it poking out, which is exactly what we don't want. Just cut a little bit more out of there. And voila! It's now not seen from this side. Next, zipper pocket panel. We are going to do lining right sides up. We're going to get some zipper tape, cut it to the same size, melt it as always, melt it down the other side. This is going to go back in my zipper drawer. There is still plenty of things I can do with that. I could get another zipper pocket. You could do another one on the inside of the bag if you wanted to. Well, drawer stuff. So I'm going to stitch close to this side edge. I'm still going to back stitch because it's a good habit to be in. And then I'm going to back stitch at the other end as well and trim off those tails so that they're not annoying me in a minute. And then we're going to take this one. Now, this, where we're putting the zipper, will need to be your top edge of your fabric if your fabric is directional. If it's not directional, like mine, don't worry about it. Just pick a side and off you go. And then we're going to back stitch, pull that out, trim that off. And then we need to put a zipper on. Now, if you've got one side that looks cooler than the other side, make sure that when you're holding it like this, the zipper's going to be to the left and the good side will be there. So that's the one that's actually seen when you open the zipper pocket. If they're not different and they all look the same like mine, just pick a side. Any side will do. But these are just some design things that you may want to think about when you're cutting and sewing. Because if you've got a big print, you may get like a good bit here, and then this bit, because it's never really seen, you can use a less good part of the print. So I'm going to put the zipper in the center, and I'm going to finger press this so that the zipper sits flat. We want the zipper to sit flat. You can iron it if you want to. I'm not going to, because I'm not getting up again. Right, so again, zipper faces to the left, so it'll close to the left like everything else I do. And then we're going to lay this over the zipper, laying it up in the center, making sure it's coming out both sides. And we just want to center it. Now, again, if you need to, use some double-sided tape, some skinny stuff, and stick it so that the zipper holds in place if you need to. There is no shame in double-sided tape. Don't let anybody tell you that there is. Now, I'm getting close to the zipper, so I'm going to zip it open out of my way. And I just heard that snap. That was a bit rude, wasn't it? Right on a top stitching. I'm not sure why that snapped. If it does it again, I've got a problem, or it might have just been a weak spot in the thread. Could go either way. It's not always your fault when thread snaps. Please remember that. Sometimes it's just the thread. So I've manually done one stitch, and I'm going to go back through that first hole and then continue on. And I'm going to hold this out of the way so it doesn't get caught up. If your thread snaps, just try again as if it didn't. And then if it does it again, it may still be your thread, or it may be something's going on with your machine. Like your needle's gummed up, or something's tangled somewhere. Once my spools start to get a little bit empty, sometimes they get stuck when they're on the bottom part. Especially with my black lately. So I have to kind of keep an eye on the black, because if it gets too tight, it will snap. But it's not my fault, it's just getting close to the end of the spool. Okay, I'm going to come and flip it over and trim off the tails from where I had to start again. So it's actually a loop as opposed to a tail. It's a tail now that I've cut it, but you get the idea. So then from the top, it looks lovely. So now we're going to let this fold down and trim off the excess so that they are the same size. This is why I don't usually do pockets this way. So now I'm going to lean this over. I'm going to try not to actually bend it. I don't want to put more creases in my bag. Stitch down the side. We're going to leave the bottom open, as I have a sneaking suspicion I'm turning the bag through there. Back stitch again. Pull it out. Trim it off. Another panel done. Beautiful. Okay. Oh, you know what I forgot to put in? I see what I did there. I need to put in these now. So they've got a measurement for me. Okay, so we need to go down and then over, and then these are going to stitch onto here. So we just need to stitch them down. Now I don't have the fancy end pieces, so there's a couple of things I can do. I'm actually going to just leave them raw, but I am going to stitch them together so that they are at least one piece. You could also do a strap connector hole and tuck them inside. That would also be quite cute. Actually, tucking them in would be very cute. I might get some extra fabric and tuck these in so that they're not going to be seen, because then they can just be coming out of the bag. If you've got vinyl, you can just cut the slit and do them. But again, I use suede because I thought I was being cool. So we can't do that. So I am going to go and cut. How big are these? Little. So I'm going to go and cut about 3 inches by 2 inches, just in some scrap fabric, doesn't matter what it is, just so that I can line that section and pop these in like that, and then we can stitch them down. Because I don't have fancy ends to put on here, so I'd like to hide those raw ends, and I think it would look much neater. If you've got strap ends, don't do it my way. You'll just lay them on top and stitch them down with your fancy strap end on. But I still want this to look really cool, so let's go do that. I'm going to go and cut 3 inch by 2 inch, and I need 4 of them, 1 for each of my buckles, and I'll be right back. I went with black because it's a similar color to my straps. I also could have gone a gray because it's similar to the mane. You're not really going to see it, but it's always nice to match. And this was just some scrap fabric I have in a tub of scrap fabric. So, let's take this one, because this one is the most relative to where to put stuff, because it's got something in the way and the other one doesn't. So I'm going to measure down. And out. So to there and to there. And then that's where I want it. So then down and out the other way. There. There. And like that. While I've got those measurements in my head, we'll find the center. Do the same to this side so that everything's matching, because I like matching. And so then down and out. So to there. And then the other way to there. So my markings are very, very similar to the ones that they've got. Now this is only, I've used 3/4 inch buckles. If you've used 1, obviously you need to adjust what size you're about to do on here. But we need a Chaco pen or something that you're going to be able to see on here. I actually might be able to see this ink. No, not that one. Some kind of red pen ink comes across black quite well. I just need to be able to see what I'm marking. Yeah, that'll work. Now, it doesn't have to be perfectly in the center, so don't think that it does. But I'm just going to mark 3/4 inch by 1/2 inch rectangles in roughly the center. Now, I know you probably can't see that. I can see it in this light. I could also turn on this light here and make it even more bright if I needed to. Or you could use a Chaco pen. I think mine are empty. I have ordered some more for those that wish to purchase one from me. I ordered some more. Oh, actually, they might be showing up today. Might not be too. I'm actually not sure. So I'm just measuring this on all the pieces. Excellent. Now I know that you guys can't see this, but I'm going to explain what I'm doing anyway, so it's fine. So I'm going to go to adjoining stitch length and line up. Now this is where a pin's super handy. I'm going to put a line in the corner and line it up with the corner like that. And that is where I want this to go. And then I'm going to stitch around the box that I drew. I didn't even interface this. You can if you want to, but I don't really think it's necessary for what we're going to be doing with it. Like that. And so then what we're doing, I know this is like a whole extra step, but just bear with me. So I'm going to triangle out the corners with a craft knife because it's such a small space. You're not going to have much of a straight line in between them all. And then we're just going to tuck all of this fabric into that hole. Oh, I've still got something attached. Hold on. So I'm just using my finger to push it all through. You can even pull on it if you need to. Like this. And so now I'm just going to kind of squish it back and forth until it comes through. And so now I've got a nice hole where this can pop down into, like so. Pull that down. We just move that strap adjuster or strap circle, like so. And then we actually only want to put, so in all honesty, we just want to put one in the hole, and then we're going to stitch that one down at the top. So, I know this is complex, but just bear with me, it's going to look fabulous. So we don't want it too far in the hole because this slide still needs somewhere to sit. So about there, and I'm going to stitch underneath along here, like that. And that's held that down and that top edge. And then we tuck the other side in. If it wants to let me. Come on now. This is all because I don't have those fancy strap ends, but it's fine. And so now I'm going to pull on that fabric and I'm going to stitch on my actual bag to stitch that all closed. So you just want to kind of tug on that black fabric that we used so that we're not seeing it. We don't want to see it, but it's there to hide all raw edges. So it was a necessary thing, like that. And then we're just going to stitch, back stitch, stitch along there, back stitch. And then we might even add a rivet for good measure. We'll do the rivet at the end. Trim off all of those tails. So this is what it looks like from the back. You've just got this like random piece of fabric and then this is sticking through. But from the top, you've got this very neat strap piece. Okay, so we need our needle again. I'll do one more on camera and then I'll do the other two off camera. So, needle in the corner, needle in the hole so that they line up, because that's the easiest way to do it. You can push it all the way down if you need to. So that's where it needs to sit. And then we're going to stitch around the box, needle down and pivot around and around and around and around. Yeah, see, I didn't put my needle down enough and it moved. And then back stitch. If you don't have a craft knife, you can use scissors. Because it's such a small space, it's only 3/4 of an inch wide. So I'm just kind of triangling it out. And I'm starting in the corner and cutting towards the center, and that ensures that I don't cut any stitches, which is also important. If you do accidentally cut your stitches, just stitch like one stitch back from the cut and you'll be able to fix it. So tuck one side and then another. There you go, that one went through much easier. So like that, you can just kind of pull it out a little bit. You can iron it if you want to. I'm just going to finger press it. And there we go. So grab a strap connector. And we're going to just tuck the back side in through the hole. Like that. And then we're going to stitch that one down. So we're stitching it basically just above the hole. Fold it all out of the way. Stitch, back stitch, stitch, back stitch. As much as you feel comfortable with. Doesn't need to be heaps. It's just to hold it in place. And then I'm going to tuck that one down into the hole as well. Maybe. There it is. And then we're going to stitch that bottom edge. And then that slides down to there. And everyone's happy. Back stitch, top, back stitch. And trim off the big loops from the bobbin thread at the back. So there you go. They now look fabulous. They're going to sit upright more when they've got the handle attached, but you get the idea. So I'm going to turn the camera off and do the other two, and then I will be right back. So I have now done all of those. I have decided I do want to put a rivet in because I think it's going to look both entertaining, exciting, and be functional and help hold those in, since this is where the weight of the bag will be held. So I'm just going to punch a hole in the center underneath all 4 of the buckles. And this will just help hold everything together. And look cool. Like that. So now I'm just going to grab a post, and you can either push it in from the front or the back, and then clip the cap on and grab your rivet press or however you set your rivets. And we're just going to pop those in as well. I just think it gives it a little extra something, but again, you don't have to do these if you don't want to. Everything is optional. Well, almost everything. Just pop that through. And then that. Squish it down. And the 4th one. And squish. Okay. Let's construct the outside now. Open that zip up so I can get the bag through. So it wants us to start by stitching the base to the main panels. So I'm going to fold this in half, find the center, and clip it like we always do. Because I've already found the center of my base when I had to put my logo in. So I've already got my base found. So I want that way. Now I'm going to add some clips because otherwise the bag feet are kind of in my way. Not necessarily in my way, but they're also not sitting, making the panels sit flat together. So by adding the clips, at least I know they'll be lined up as I'm trying to stitch them. And where do we want to stitch to? Okay, so we're going to stitch from here across. like that. And then we are going to put it up to a decorative stitch length, and all of this folds up and under like so. So it also means that this first part is going to stitch up and under as well, so that this looks flat and neat. So I'm going to top stitch this along here. Now I'm top stitching 1/8 of an inch away from the seam, and I'm stitching on the bigger side, not the base. Tucking under all of those raw edges like so, and back stitch. If you can hear like a jangling sound, it's my buckles. Okay, so that's one side on. Now we want to do the other side. So again, I need to find the center and clip it. And then put this right sides together, clip it again, and I'm going to clip it with the clips facing the base piece so that I can see where I can start and stop. I don't have to stitch all the way. And then under the needle we go, stitch and back stitch. We might want to go back to a joining stitch length for this. Like that, and back stitch when we get to the edge. Crank it back up to my top stitching, and we're going to trim off these tails before we start so that they're not in the way. And then, so this is where it's going to get quite big. So we want to tuck this under like that, and then we're going to kind of want to roll this up so that we can get it under the machine. So this is where things start to get a bit tricky. You want to make sure that all of that seam allowance is under where we're stitching, so it's facing away from the base piece. And then stitch that down like that. Voila! So now you should have this lovely looking individual. So I'm going to come up, I think we're doing the sides now. One would assume so. Base piece is on. Okay, so we're going to stitch down the side. Now my accents are a little bit wider than my piece. Possibly because they stretched, possibly because I sewed them wrong. It could go either way at this point. But I am just going to trim it off so that it's going to remain even, and it's going to help me with straight sides, so it's not bulging at one end. Okay. So, because the accents are on the bottom, we're going to start at the bottom. We're going to take some clips, we're going to pin or clip that bottom edge, and then we're going to match up those accent panel pieces. And you want to put a clip each side, like that. And then we're going to come and match up the top. And then if you want to, and I usually do, once I've started clipping, I get a little bit clip happy. So I'm going to clip all the way down like this. I'm going to flip it over, and we're going to clip both sides, so then we can just stitch one after the other. So I'm going to line up that bottom and put a clip. And then I'm going to line up the accent, because you want that to match. That's something you'll notice on the side of the bag. So if you match it up now, another clip there. Oh, I keep doing that. That's the drawer that comes with the sewing machine, but I don't keep it in the sewing machine because it vibrates and annoys me. So I've got it like on a stand underneath, and it keeps catching because I haven't pushed it back far enough. But if I push it back too far, it's going to fall off, which is a whole new problem. So then we're just clipping down like that. So now it looks like this, so we're just going to stitch it. So I'm going to start at the bottom because the bottom is the thickest part, and I always like to go thick to thin. I find it easier, so that may be helpful for you. Now you want to go slow here. That's quite thick. It's got a lot going on at that section. So it's just something to think about, and I hope I don't hit the camera. I'm sorry if I do. But it's a large toad, so it could happen. Then we're going to come and trim off those tails. Put the clips back in the jar. Flip over so that I can start at the bottom again. Take the clip off. I've clearly put all my clips on the wrong way. These things happen. Trim that. And that. And so I am now going to trim off this here bulk, because too many layers is just too hard. I'm going to trim that down like that. And so now when I pull this over to stitch across here, there's less bulk in this center, which is going to make it easy to stitch. So I'm going to add lots of clips this time because I don't want it to shift while I'm sewing. And I'm going to do the same to the other end. Two, three, one. There's no right or wrong amount of clips. I've got, what, 6 and 5 on that end. So I didn't even do them evenly, but that's okay. Alright. Doing that. Okay, so I'm going to lift this out of the way. I'm going to start here. Now, instead of back stitching, because I know I'm going to have issues, I've pulled it back and I've started again. I did recently do a sewing candy video on just different types of back stitching. So different ones are good for different particular situations. Now you want to go slow on here because there is quite a lot of bulk right in the center. Back stitch a couple of times to lock that in. And then flip and oops, I just knocked all the lighting. Fold that back so it's out of your way. Tuck it under and we're going to go again. So again, I'm going to do a couple of stitches and then lift it up and then go back to the start. No, that's shredding. I had a weird loop. If you see something wrong with your machine, don't ignore it because it just means it's going to be harder to fix later. I'm going to try that again. 1, 2, 3. Back through the first one. That's better. Be careful over that center point. And then back stitch. Trim off those tails. And then you can check it. Now I've just looked at the next part of the pattern and we are actually not going to turn it through the pocket. But I think we might anyway. So what it actually, the pattern actually calls for, I'm going to trim that off, is we're going to tack this down, tack the other bit down, and then just top stitch them together. I don't know how that's actually going to go. So I'm still going to turn it through my pocket. Because go with what you know with. So I'm going to turn this right sides out. Like this. And then I've got a pocket on this side and I want all my zippers to go the same way because it's just my thing. So I need the zipper to finish on this side so that when I close this zip, that's where it will finish. So we're going to take the side that is not clipped open and pop it here. So we're going to go right sides together. Now, before I continue any further, I'm going to trim off some of this excess seam allowance for easier top stitching later. And then I'm going to line up those seams and I'm going to add 2 clips. And I'm going to have them facing the lining panel because that's the way I'm going to stitch it. And then we're going to come across to this other side. And again, I'm going to trim off some of that. Just where we're going to need to top stitch, take out the bulk. You'll find it easy to top stitch later. So again, I'm going to line up these seams here. Make the clips face the lining piece. And then when you pull tight, everything should just kind of line up. I am going to move this panel, the zipper panel, to face down so it's out of my way. I really hope this bag fits through the zipper pocket. Otherwise we're going to unpick stuff. I guess we're going to find out. This is turning out to be a very cute bag though. Alright, so again, zipper panel face down, otherwise the clips that I have attached are getting in the way. But if we remove the clips, then we might stitch over the zipper. So it's just easier to push it down. All of my clips are facing the lining so that they're going to be easy to pull off in a minute when I'm stitching. And you can use as many or as few clips as you like. This is what I've done. This is also why I don't seal off that zipper, because it's just much easier. Now I don't want to start at a seam. I want as little bulk at the seams as possible. So I'm going to start somewhere roughly in like the middle-ish. There's not really a right or wrong answer. You start wherever you want. We're going to stitch and back stitch to lock it in. And then, I know you can't see because of all this, but then we're just going to stitch and pull the zips off. And we're stitching basically in a circle. I'm going to stop and adjust the bag and bring it most of it over here. Now if you've got a cylinder arm machine, you would face all of the clips in the opposite direction and sew it that way. If you are using leather, you may want to do the fold over and turn, but I would be gluing it in place with some leather glue, letting it dry, and then top stitching it. And when we get back to the start, we back stitch again. So now, this is what we've got. Before we turn it through, I'm going to cut little V's out of where the seams are. Because again, by removing that little bit of bulk, you're more likely to get your domestic machine to sew and top stitch nicely. You just want to remove as much bulk as humanly possible. Now, let's do this. So I'm going to go into the zipper pocket, which I left open, and I'm going to grab a corner. I'm going to push that corner down so that I can grab onto it like a puppet. And then I'm going to kind of compress the bag, aka squish. Compress the bag down because what we need is we need this pocket to fold over and encase the entire bag. If you get all of this through your zipper pocket, I promise after that it will easily turn through. So I'm holding the zipper pocket and I'm putting my hand in and I'm just going to slowly do this motion to ease out the bag through the hole. You don't just want to grab it and pull as hard as you can. That's not going to help. You want to ease it through. So we're rolling our wrist. We're pulling gently. We're not just ripping like this. It won't get you anywhere. So I'm rotating it around. I'm grabbing a little bit and turning because you never know which bit actually wants to come through. So I just turn it around and around. If you get a good bit that moves, you might want to do 2 in that section. But see how now all of the bag is technically in the lining? This means I know that it's going to pop out at any second. See? There it goes. Just see that go there? And then I'm going to stick my hand back into the pocket and I'm going to push out the base. You want to push that out so it's going to sit nice and flat. You want to get all your corners If you can't do it with your hands, grab your flute cleaner or chopstick or whatever you use to turn out corners. And see how our edges are nice and flush? See that? That is just one of those minor details that is the difference between what looks handmade and homemade. Just one of those like finishing touches that you should strive for. It's okay if you miss the first couple of times. You're learning. Now, I'm going to turn these raw edges in and pull tight. And then we're going to just stitch right along that edge to seal this pocket up. We don't need to get in there anymore. If you have fabric bag tabs, now's the time you probably want to put it in. I would put it in the outside seam zipper pocket because people are more likely to use your outside zipper pockets, which means they're more likely to see your tag. Then I'm just going to tuck the pocket in. I'm going to use my fingers to push the corner all the way in. I've got like flat knife hand going. Zip that up. It's starting to look really good. So now we just need to top stitch. So the edge of the bag is actually here, and that's the inside lining. So you want to tuck that down, and if you can't work it out, you've only got one outside piece, and then everything else is inside. So you might just want to roll that seam in your fingers, and depending on what fabric you used, you could iron here. Not if you've used vinyl. And if you're going to iron suede, I suggest it on a lower temperature and quick so that you don't melt or burn or distort any of your suede. Suede. Or you can just do what I'm doing and clip it. So I'm just rolling the seam in my fingers back and forth like this until the seam is right in the center on top. Now, unfortunately, I have to do this in my lap because it's just easier for me. But here's that side seam. Look at that. Perfect both directions because I used 2 clips to line it up, not just the one. If you just use 1 clip, sometimes it can slip. But 2 is much stronger than 1, so you get a better result. Same with the side panels. When I don't use 2 clips, they never quite line up as well as I was hoping. So again, we're rolling it in our fingers until that seam is right on the edge. You could also, if you've used vinyl and it's not sitting as nice as you want, and you obviously can't iron it, you can use those pliers, the Leatherwork smooth pliers. And that will crush it so it's flatter. Or if you've got one of those rollers, you can get it on the edge and then roll it. So that's most of the way. I am going to clip all of it just because I really want it to sit right on that edge. A little bit more. There you go. So that is all now clipped into place. I'm going to go up to a 4 size stitch length. And again, I don't want to start right on that seam, but I do want to start close-ish to the side so that my join is less noticeable. Now, because I'm top stitching, oh, see, that was close. Because I'm top stitching and I've got to go completely around, I'm not going to back stitch at the start because I don't want unnecessary bulk. So I'm going to have nice long tails so that I can hold them well and truly out of the way. And then I'm going to start here. Now I'm going to top stitch at 1/8 of an inch, but if you're new to top stitching or it's thick and you're concerned, do it at a full 1/4 inch. It's still going to look nice. It's just going to be more manageable to do. You want to go slowly so that your stitches are even. If I went too fast, you might find that if it comes to a section, it might bunch up a little bit. Now I'm bringing the bag up and around. I know you can't really see on this angle, so sorry, but we're just top stitching slowly. Now, if you heard that difference in the machine just there, that was me going over a side seam. Now that I can get to these tails, I'm going to trim them off so that they don't get tangled when we get back to the start. And again, slow and steady will win this race. You never want to do fast top stitching. It never works out, I promise you. Needle down when you stop. Always needle down so that nothing can move on you. And then again, readjust the bag. We're almost back to the start. Okay, I'm in the same, right now I'm in the starting hole. So I'm going to go forward 2 and back 2. Forward 2, back 2. And that's all the back stitching I'm going to do. And then trim that right off there. And I'm going to need to melt that. Make sure you don't touch the suede though, you'll wreck the suede. And now your bag is top stitched. Looks awesome. So now, I've got a couple more steps and we're done. Now that we've top stitched and everything's done, we are now going to attach our inner zipper. Because if we had done it before, it would have been more difficult. So we're going to go to the open end. Take off those clips that were there. Grab your zipper pull. Put one side in. I always put the left side in first because I'm right-handed, I think. So I put the left side in first. Then I use my right hand to maneuver them so that they're even. So you want to look down the back of the zipper, see that they're even, and then push it in. So that looks lovely and even to me. So now we need our zipper stop. So because I've used the vinyl, my zipper end is the width of the zipper times 2 that way. So it's going to be a nice square when we're finished. So my zipper is 1 1/4 inches wide. So I did 1 1/4 by 2 1/2. If you've used a different size zipper, your dimensions will be different. But that's okay. So it's the width, and then this is double the width, so that you get a square. You don't have to do a square. You can do a rectangle. You can do whatever you want. I'm just telling you what I did. So now I'm just going to stick it on the end, but I'm not going to put it all the way in because then it won't be as long and I won't have as much excess. So I'm going to start here. I'm on a nice long stitch length. I'm going to stitch 2 back, go over the zipper, stop with my needle down, move my clips, and then I'm going to pivot the entire bag so that I can go down this side easily. Needle down. Then I'm going to come back this way and bring the bag around here so I didn't have to force it through there. And that last stitch was almost too far. And then we're going to pivot back down here and back stitch. And then melt those ends because they're sticking up again. Right. That is now the zipper top in. So the only thing left to do is to attach our handles. So I'm going to take a handle. Now my joint I like to have on the inside. So I'm going to thread it up through the hole that we punched. Like that. And then down. And then through that strap holder, which is our little loop. And that's actually quite tight. I've possibly made mine a little bit too tight, but at least I know it's not going to fall out. Come on. This is also a stretchy vinyl, so one would assume that it's going to go. So, first life advice I have learnt from doing this bag is you probably want to make those a little bit looser than I did, but instead I'm just going to get my clamps and squish that end so it's super flat, and then it's more likely to go through. It is going, just not fast. I'll do that in a minute. So then we're going to bring this out, make sure there's no twists in it, and then bring it in. And we're going to do the same on this side. So we're going to go up, put that through the hole. Now I just used my normal 2mm hole punch. There was nothing magical about that. See, this one's going to go easier, I reckon. That one's halfway in. I might just get some tweezers and pull that through. But either way, that will still hold on. I just need to, so if I untuck that, it does still hold on to there. So we're going to do the same with the other side. So go in, through the hole, and then down the other side of the buckle. And then make sure it's flat. Twist it around through the hole there. Now, if you did happen to accidentally twist this, you can quite easily just unbuckle it and go again. I'm determined to get one of these in. If you're going to use tweezers, just make sure you're going to be careful. My tweezers aren't there, so I can't even use them. That's all right. Oh, there we go. I got one in. Haha. So that is how it's going to sit. So I think we're all done there, though. So that bag turned out quite cute. The main thing that I would probably do different is put foam in it because of the weight at the top. But if I'm holding it, it sits lovely. It does need a final iron from the inside so I don't wreck the suede. But all in all, I think that bag came out lovely. So there you go, guys. One for the Love of Buckles bag. All right, bye-bye.